Alright, so I'm going to create, in order to carry my gear more efficiently, I could just do a blanket roll, yes, but I want to show some more skills and isolate some of those notches that we did on the tri-stick. So what I want to make is a ladder pack frame, which is a style of improvised pack frame that you can make to lash your equipment to and carry it efficiently through the woods. So I've selected 5 sticks. 2 of them are roughly armpit to fingertip, and those are going to be my uprights. So what I'm going to do with those is look for any sharp edges that might be uncomfortable, anything poking out, and I'm going to kind of clean those off. Because while it may not seem like such a big deal right now, a couple kilometers into your movement might be making things a little uncomfortable. Good habit to get into anytime you see a butt end like that, a square butt. You go ahead and crown it off. Sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't. In this case, it doesn't much matter. This particular one has some joints on here that I want to take off. So I can take those off and make it nice and smooth. And I'll crown that real quick. Alright, that feels better. So for these uprights, I selected sticks that were probably thumb diameter because I don't really want a lot of weight in my pack frame. And you know, to be honest, larger than an inch or a thumb in diameter is really kind of overkill for these, in my opinion. I want a nice lightweight but sturdy frame that's not going to break. And honestly, the type of pressure that I'm putting on this doesn't require a stick bigger than that. So from there, I'll match up my ends. They're equal length. I'll decide which is the top and which is the bottom. Excuse me. And then about 4 fingers down, so roughly 4 inches or so, is where I'm going to make a little score to mark my spot. And I want these to be even. That's where I'll start my square notch. Same thing from the bottom. And then I've got 3 other pieces that are roughly the same size or smaller, and I'll put the largest one towards the bottom. In this case, that's here. And then I'm going to start my square notches. So for these, the cross pieces, the cross members, they're actually going to be probably a good, 4 to 6 inches less, depending on the width of your back. Mine are about, I would say, 5 inches shorter than my uprights. As you might suspect, I'll crown those off. Look for any rough spots. That feels pretty good. Now from that score mark that I made towards the inside, I'm going to have roughly a 3-inch overhang. So I'm going to line that up, and I'm going to score the top. And set that to the side. Now I've got 2 scored marks, and that's the exact width of my cross member. So what I want to create here is a square notch. So I'll come in, billet a stop cut, stop cut the other side, carve towards one, and then carve towards the other. Now I've just broke through to where I can see that center pith, so that's as deep as I want to go. Now on the other piece, I need to carve a corresponding square notch for that to sit in. I want that to be about 3 inches past. And I want to actually put the square notch on the bottom side, so I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees and mark the edges of my upright. And that's where I'm going to put that square notch. Now that that square notch is complete, I'll check my fit. When I put those two together, they should seat inside each other perfectly and not have a lot of play. That fits pretty well. You can see I don't have a lot of play up and down, so that's a good solid wood crafting joint right there. Now I'm going to continue this. I'm going to create another square notch up at the top, another square notch in the middle, and then of course on both uprights, so that I'll have 2 vertical uprights with 3 horizontal cross pieces. Now that I got my corresponding square notches, what I'm going to do is put those notches together, and I'm going to lash these. Now I could do a diagonal lash on these, but anytime there's a 90 degree, I like to use a square lash. So I'm going to do a square lash on this particular frame. So what I need is 5 to 6 feet of cordage. In this case I'm using some bank line. And I can start this with either a clove hitch or a timber hitch. Now I'm going to choose to use the timber hitch just so I can show you a new knot. But what I'll do for a timber hitch is I'll get myself about a 4 to 6 inch bite, and remember, a bite is basically bringing this back, and it's a loop that doesn't cross itself. If it crossed over itself, that's a loop. What I'm creating is a bite in the rope. About 4 inches. I'll take my finger through and I'll start twisting it, 5-6 times or so. And with that loop that I've created now with several twists, what I'll do is you can either bring the very end up through that loop, or you can fold it back on itself and pull the end through that way. Either way, what you end up with is the loop that you created with all those twists and a free running end that slips through there. I'll take that, place it over my cross member in this case, and I'll tighten that timber hitch down. Now that I've got that secured by the timber hitch, I've got my tail captured. I'm running vertically right now. I'm going to go 90 degrees but behind. Pull that tight. Come down the front and around the back side. And every time I get one wrap, which is what I'm doing right now, I'm going to tighten that as tight as I possibly can. If you have to use a toggle, use a toggle. Wrap that around a couple of times and really cinch it down. The tighter you get this, the less wiggle you're going to have in your finished product. Then I'll continue with my next wrap. That wrap will be stacked right next to that one. Continue around for a third wrap. And now I've completed 4 wraps. Tighten that as tight as I can possibly get it. Now I'm going to finish on this side with a clove hitch. What I'll do is I'll turn it around, because I'm used to tying clove hitches this way. And I'm going to create the beginning of my first half hitch. I've got this small window right here. Bring my running end around. And I've created my first half hitch. Now, I'm going to bring that end around again, parallel to the first half hitch. And I'm going to come through on the inside of that same diagonal locking bar. And I'll dress that down. Now what I should have on my clove hitch as it starts to close down, you're not going to be able to see it once it's tight, is I've got 2 parallel wraps, and those wraps will be touching each other. 2 parallel wraps right here with a diagonal locking bar. And I want that seated up against the wraps. I'll tighten that down. Go ahead and toggle it so that it's nice and tight. And then, because it is possible for this clove hitch to slip out, I'm just going to put a stopper knot right up against those wraps by making an overhand. To make my overhand, create a loop, bring the tail back through that loop. I'm going to start to tighten it down, and as I'm tightening it down, I'm kind of working it to where, and dressing this knot to where that knot, that stopper knot that is overhand that I'm creating, sits right up against that wrap as tightly as possible, and that keeps it from being pulled through. All I have to do is trim off the excess. So that is my square lash. Now, for a normal square lash, if you don't have notches, then after you do your wraps, you need to do a series of fraps, frapping turns to tighten those wraps down and hold them securely. But because this is notched, you don't need the fraps. All you need is the wraps. But you can see that joint is extremely tight, not a lot of wiggle room in there. And once this entire frame gets put together, it'll be even more so. So I'm going to continue doing that for all the others, and then I'll get back with you shortly. Now to get this complete, that's about as sturdy as a frame as you could ask for. Now I'm going to have some way to carry it, so I'm going to fashion some straps, and you can use 2 shamags. You could use single shamag with some paracord. I found that 1 shamag just isn't quite long enough, but I've got a 10-foot length of rope here that I'll use, and this is what, if I was to carry my gear in a bedroll, I would use this to secure my bedroll. So it's not that much of a transition to use it for the actual backpack straps. So what I like to do is find the center and do a lark's head. So I'm creating a bite. I'm pulling the 2 tails up through that bite. Make sure your tails are nice and even. Put your tails together, milk it down. And now I've got the start of my lark's head. If I go around one more time and come towards the center of those, I've just created a prusik, a 4-wrap prusik. I like to use the prusik because it tends to bite better and stay centered on this cross member better. But you could get away with just a lark's head. Right about my center right there. Get my wraps nice and tight so that they bite. And my locking bar is up. So my prusik is 4 parallel wraps. The 2 on the inside are coming out to the length of my rope, and then I have a cross locking bar, and that is centered. Obviously this is the top cross member. So the prusik is on the center of my top cross member. My locking bar is on the inside, which will be towards my back. My straps are coming to the front. I can just place it over the top of my head, split those straps, and then bring them down. From there, I've got this extra 3 inches or so on both sides. I'll bring this around, capture those, and pull towards the center. Do that on both sides. And I want that to rest roughly across my lumbar region, right on my lower back. That's where I want it, so I'll tighten everything up to that point. And there's a couple of things that you can do here. You just need to do some sort of knot here. Normally what I'll do is a square knot, right over left, tuck it around, and then left over right, tuck it around, and that holds it securely. And of course I don't have anything loaded on this yet. I'll do that in another video and show you how I pack it out. But you notice how nice and high this sits. This is across my lumbar. I've got my shoulder straps that are distributing the weight up here, and my waistband is distributing the weight over top of my hip bones right here. Now, having this tied around your waist if you're operating in an area that has a lot of water hazards is not a good idea, because if you fall in the drink and you need to get this off quickly, sometimes you'll be fumbling with the knot, and that's not something that you want to do. So I'll show you another technique that you can use to tie this that has a quick release. So coming over to the side, over here to the right side, I'm going to establish a bowline or any sort of fixed loop, honestly, whatever you want to do over there. I'm going to use a bowline. Tie it a little closer. I want it a little closer to my hip so that when I tighten it down, it doesn't come all the way across. There, now it's roughly centered. That's about where I want it. If you don't know how to tie a bowline, watch my 11 essential knots videos and it'll go through it several times. Now on this side, and I've still got that excess captured, on this side I've created a fixed loop. On this side I want to create a bite where it doesn't cross over, push it through that fixed loop. Now what you see I've got my bowline coming across, and then I pushed a bite through that bowline, and that is captured by that fixed loop. Now with the running end, I want to take another bite and push it through the bite that I just created, and keep everything nice and tight. So now I've got a fixed loop on this side, and I've got two bites that are locking each other together. So that's completely secure and not going anywhere, but if I go to where I'm falling in the drink, I can get that off just like that. Okay? Try to give you a closer view of that. So what I've got is, on my right side, I've got a fixed loop. In this case I'm using a bowline. You could use any fixed loop that you wanted. That comes about center line. Now with that other side, the left side, I'm actually going to take a bite, which is not a loop, it doesn't cross over itself, just a bite, pass it through that fixed loop, and that captures that. So now I've got my bowline, which is my fixed loop, I've got my bite, and I've got the tail. Now with that tail, I'm going to create another bite, push that bite through the bite I just created, and those are going to lock on each other. So I've got my fixed loop, which is the bowline, a bite coming through there, and that bite is capturing the last bite that has the tail, which is the quick release. So if I need to get out of this quickly, I just pull and everything goes free.